So I would welcome you all tonight. Tonight is the October 9th, 2025 meeting of the CIP Citizen Request City Council Subcommittee. My name is Nathan Lunny. I'm the Deputy City Manager of Finance and Administration, and I want to welcome the City Council Subcommittee members, Assistant Mayor Kelly, Councilors Tabor and Moreau. I want to thank Planning Board Chairman Chelman for joining us tonight. City Manager Karen Conard is with us remotely on Zoom. I would offer introductions of staff, let you know that with us tonight, Peter Rice, Director of Public Works and Facilities, Peter Britz, Director of Planning and Sustainability, Dr. Zach McLaughlin, our Superintendent of Schools, Sean Clancy, Assistant City Manager for Economic and Community Development, and don't want to miss our Deputy City Clerk, June Philbrook, helping us out tonight. And then my teammates, Mike Tucker, our Deputy Finance Director, and Abby Mills, our Administrative Manager and Budget Coordinator. Tonight, the agenda that was prepared is really straightforward. We have some opening slides that we'll share with you about the CIP process in general, because this is the first step of our annual CIP process, working with the citizen requests. After that, we'll talk about briefly what the process will be for the rest of the consideration tonight. And then we'll open up public comment because we want to create an opportunity for our citizens, especially those that are here with requests tonight, to have a chance to speak to those. After that, the committee will consider the requests, and we'll close the night with a recommendation to council to add those to the city IP project list that the staff are preparing now. So if there are no other questions or any questions tonight, let me know. I've been encouraged to be brief, and I'm a storyteller. So you won't get any tonight, though, because the boss is watching me, and I told her I would be very.
Even in your briefness, you're in
It's a story about briefness.
Karen, we're gonna minimize and take that off the screen. And put that down here, because that's going out over the airwaves. I should have asked Karen if she could see it, but Kevin let us know.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
there you go. Thank you.
Hey, first, what is the capital improvement plan? Our CIP is a multi-year financial and infrastructure planning tool. It's the first step in our annual budget development process, and the resulting plan that we develop is it's important in supporting efforts to maintain a safe city environment, to schedule financial strategies to help us fund capital projects as we move, and it's an important aid in achieving city goals. The CIP is made up of, this year, will ultimately, it looks like, be over 100 projects. But what is it that qualifies as a CIP project? At the risk of reading to you, let me read to you that there are categories we have developed over the years. CIP capital improvement projects are, for us, significant issues of construction or expansion of any of our infrastructure. So it could be buildings, or it could be streets, roads, etc. We also categorize CIP projects that are rehab of our public facilities or other infrastructure. It could be design work or planning that we do in anticipation of and identification of planning needs. It could be equipment or other important items that are not vehicles generally, that cost $50,000 or more and have a lengthy life expectancy. It also now includes replacement and purchase of vehicles that require bonding authorization. The council will consider at their next meeting bonding authority for $2.5 million for one of our fire apparatus, one of the fire trucks, that will take a 5-year lead time to actually get ordered and delivered to us. And then on occasion, there's land acquisition that qualifies as well for CIP. The goals of funding CIP projects are lumped for us into a couple of categories, but talking about them creates a grand opportunity to discuss with you that folks often ask questions, and it's important to talk about up front that the CIP is not a final or approval or authorization of any specific project or projects. The CIP is a planning document, It's also an essential component of the budget process because the first year of this 6-year CIP that we build, after final adoption by the City Council, which we anticipate in December, is used as building blocks for the development of the proposed budget for the next cycle. So our CIP process that we've undertaken now will create year one, which will be building blocks for the FY27 proposed budget. CIP offers a map of capital outlay, which are appropriated and raised dollars in the budget cycle. Capital outlay is our pay-as-you-go mechanism for funding capital needs. City policy directs that we include in the capital outlay category not more than 2% of the prior year budget. CIP also drives the calculation of debt service for long-term borrowing. City policy in this regard guides that we should not invest more than 10% of any year's annual budget in our net debt service for long-term borrowing. So, current year details in the CIP, they become the basis for budget elements, but only after the City Council approves the budget in June do those elements become final. And then the council can make changes along the way, but any borrowing or bonding requires an additional public hearing and an additional authorization vote from the council, which generally happens each July following the passage of the budget in June. So this CIP is just the first step, and the citizen request process is our first step of the first step, if you will. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight. All of the CIP projects that we consider each cycle, we evaluate against three primary categories of concern. One is core function. So we do our best to group our projects under core functions that respond to state and federal requirements or address significant immediate needs or alleviate substandard conditions that we might have in facilities or infrastructure in the city. Alternatively, projects may end up on the CIP because they have financial benefit, which is that they are synergistic with an existing project that is happening otherwise, or there are funds being dedicated by external sources like state or federal programs, or we're doing something that would significantly reduce long-term operating costs of the city, so the investment today saves tomorrow. Additionally, projects end up prioritized because they were identified in some planning document or study that has been undertaken by the city. It improves the quality of or adds to the capacity of services we're already providing in the city. It offers an incentive to economic development for our community, or responds to the goals that have been established by the council of the city for operations of municipal government. Should I skip a slide? Yep. I've talked a little bit already about some of these global thoughts, that the plan is a plan, it doesn't commit funding today. But additionally, I can tell you that the CIP will contain existing project requests that are flowing from last year's process, and some that are also new, that have been added by staff or that are generated from the citizen request process. Any new or identified projects still fall into the same bucket and are applied against the same funding limitations and challenges that we have to meet all of these needs. I can also tell you that the movement or addition of a project might have an impact and affect the timeline or ability to accomplish another project. One of the steps that we go through every cycle is to try to map out a schedule of funding and project deliverables, if you will, that keep us within that 10% limit on bonding that we talked about a slide ago. So, specific to this year and the citizen requests, we had 31 submissions this year, which was a great number, and we were pleased with the response. Last year there were 15 that we considered. Staff have reviewed all of the requests that came in, and they have provided a series of responses. All of the requests and the responses are posted in a document that is an attachment to this meeting on the city's website. Every citizen that submitted a request, the city has responded to with that same staff response. And public comment coming up in a few moments is an opportunity for folks to speak to those requests and or responses. Of the 31 that were received, staff identified 10 of the projects that are deemed eligible for consideration. So these have been reviewed by staff, and they reasonably fit the criteria that we talked about just a moment ago. 11 of the submissions that were considered by staff were found to be requests already in motion. They are included already in the CIP. They may not be in next year's portion of the CIP, but they are in the 6-year cycle or exist in projects already approved in the CIP that are underway. 7 of the projects, for one reason or another, were determined not to meet the requirements of CIP. I can think, for instance, a project that really should be best served as an operating expense, that it's not a capital project, nor does it fit the other requirements or the categories we spoke about, but it is something that ought to be added to the operating budget and should be a responsibility of one of the city departments, for instance. Those things, even if they are not eligible, are, as appropriate, being taken into consideration by staff, and some of those end up in a category we call best suited for another process, which might be operating budget, or in the case of a couple of projects, would be best addressed to the Parking, Traffic, and Safety Committee, because that committee has authority to address those kinds of needs initially. So rather than suggesting them as a CIP, a capital project, we recommend that it move in that direction. All of that is in that document that's available on the web that we're looking at tonight. Those of you in the room, there are handouts available. And for the members of the community that had made those submissions, those responses were sent to. So, for the benefit of the committee and the public, I would tell you, after public comment, the intent would be to lead through a review of the projects, of the requests, have dialogue and conversation between the council committee members and the staff. And we hope that after review of the list, we'd be in a position that the committee would make a recommendation to City Council, which essentially would serve as a signal to staff to include those in the CIP that will move forward to the Planning Board and the City Council over the next couple of months. Questions from the committee?
No.
Okay. I would encourage then that we open the floor to public comment and give folks a chance. I've heard the mayor and or the assistant mayor in multiple scenarios suggest that we hold 3 minutes in our heart. We don't have a buzzer or a clock tonight, but in the interest of time, we've scheduled public comment to be at this point in the meeting rather than at the end, because we didn't want to put anyone in a position where they felt that there had been a dialogue or a discussion about their request without them having the opportunity to offer comment.
So if you are looking to speak, just please come up and sit in this chair. Make sure that you just state your name for the record, please. First one.
Name and address.
Name and address. Yep, come on in.
Yeah, like to Karen.
No order.
Oh, if you guys are a duo,
We're doing this as a
Denise,
tag
that's,
team. Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Emma Stratton and I, and I'll be sure a little bit about our backgrounds briefly, are here in support of the Artist Live Work Feasibility
I'm so
Study.
sorry. Just full name and address.
Yeah, Karen Rosanna,
Perfect.
32 Boss Ave.
Thank you.
And Emma Stratton, 10 Middle Street.
Thanks, Emma.
Okay, thank you. We are both members of the Arts and Cultural Commission. I actually co-chaired the Cultural Plan Subcommittee, and Emma is currently our co-chair of the Arts and Cultural Commission. And we are tonight representing the commission, and we will provide some brief comments on 3 areas. The first is why Portsmouth needs an artist live work feasibility study. Second is what the feasibility study entails, very briefly, including the price. Third is what is the overall value to the city. So first, news update is the Arts and Cultural Commission did in fact vote in favor of a CIP for a feasibility study at our regularly scheduled meeting on September 22nd, which happened to fall just a couple of days past the deadline for the CIP. So I just want to make sure that that was known. So the why behind an artist live workspace feasibility study is coming directly from the community. So I believe all of you have seen this many times. This is the cultural plan that the city approved. And in here is very robust feedback from over 900 residents, artists, etc., that have asked loudly that they really want to see artist live workspace in the city of Portsmouth. And this was very consistent with the previous cultural plan as well. So by attracting and retaining talented, diverse local artists, it will help drive several cultural and economic factors, namely sustaining Portsmouth's creative identity, promote inclusion and equity, drive economic activity, which again, Emma's gonna talk to the value in just a moment, support workforce retention and housing affordability. So what might a feasibility study entail? That was submitted as an attachment. I believe all of you have that. We did do quite a bit of research and a report that we presented to City Council on Monday that also got unanimous approval to advance. Basically, the feasibility study is to, it's a flat fee, which is always nice to see, $65,000, and the scope of work would be completed 8 to 12 months. The company organization that we have engaged with that is an expert in this area is called ArtSpace. They're based out of Minneapolis. This is all they do, is they work with communities to develop, create, expand, find artists, live workspace. And just briefly, the goal of the feasibility study is to understand the potential to create a successful, affordable, self-sustaining facility, and entails 6 components: project concept, potential sites, creative sector, funding and financing, local leadership, and alignment with broader community goals. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Emma for the value.
Thanks,
of
Karen.
the city.
Yeah, we are so excited to be here tonight, and thank you for considering our request for this feasibility study. As Karen has indicated, the arts and culture sector is a huge part of our economy here in Portsmouth. So a recent Americans for the Arts study indicated that just here in Portsmouth, over $70 million annually is generated by our local arts organizations and the audiences. That's over 1,200 jobs and $13 million in tax revenue. And we see in the changes and the challenges to affordable housing here in Portsmouth that our artists are leaving this area. They're leaving to go to Rochester, to Dover, to other places. We really want to retain that part of our cultural sector here in the city. And we believe that doing this feasibility study to find a solution to the artist live work model is one of the ways in which to combat that. So we have already started to have this discussion as part of the Sherburne School redevelopment that Portsmouth Housing Authority is working on. We've been in conversation with them, and it feels like there's a lot of opportunity to really identify additional spaces that we can find existing in the city or potential new development that can support artist live work housing. When we say artist live workspace, that can mean hybrid and mixed use solutions. It can be live work units, studios, galleries, shared performance space, shared exhibition space. But we really want to support that part of our economy here, that arts and culture sector. And this feasibility study, working with ArtSpace, is the way we have identified to do it, bringing in the professionals who have done this in cities across the country, and the opportunity for Portsmouth to really be a leader in this area of New England, to try to find creative solutions to an ongoing problem with affordable housing, especially as it impacts our artists' community. So we're really hoping this will give us some data-driven guidance in order to take next steps on how to address this here in Portsmouth. And with that, is there anything else you want to say,
One
Karen?
last thing is, oftentimes we get a question is, what other communities across New Hampshire might have artists live workspace, where artists are living and creating their craft in the same spot. And the answer is there's a couple. There's not many, so we do view this as an opportunity, again, for Portsmouth to be a leader. But certainly when you look at other cities across the region, many of them do in fact have existing artist live workspace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good evening, CIP subcommittee members. Thank
Yeah.
you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm William Lyons, 62 Mendham Avenue, Portsmouth, and a member of the Sustainability Committee. And I would like to make comments in support of 2 items in your package that are actually the same project. The 2510, which is from the Sustainability Committee, and 2525, which is additional information that I submitted as a citizen. The project is Portsmouth Micro Transit Shuttle Loop Feasibility Study. This project was included last year, but ended up as unfunded, with staff recommendation to explore available state and federal funding after background research and work with Coast and the Rockingham Planning Commission Metropolitan Planning Organization to develop an RFP. The Sustainability Committee provided 4 different projects. This is one of the 4 projects that are taken directly out of the new Climate Action Plan. And in the case of the microtransit shuttle loop, it's actions DTS 4 and directly, that's this project, and DTS 1 and 3, which are to expand public transit and implement a bike pedestrian plan. The project reflects citizen input from the grassroots group Portsmouth Climate Action and 2 community climate conversations on sustainable transportation that provided input to the Climate Action Plan, or CAP. In that CAP, transportation is by far the dominant source of greenhouse gas emissions in Portsmouth at over 60%. To meet the 2050 carbon neutrality target in the CAP, it's critical that the city supports safe, affordable, and attractive options to increase the stark 1% of trips by public transit currently in the city. And considering the density of the city and the convergence of trip origins and trip purposes, there's really no reason why we can't have more people happily riding public transit. Microtransit would provide flexible schedule and flexible routes with on-demand service. A shuttle loop could be combined with microtransit as a hybrid, so really possibly doing both overlapping, or the shuttle loop could be undertaken as the simplest, possibly as the simplest, easiest, quick thing to do, with microtransit considered perhaps longer term in the feasibility study. In addition to supporting implementation of the Climate Action Plan, a shuttle loop specifically would provide additional near-term benefits that meet several priority goals of the city. For example, just as an example of one possible shuttle loop corridor, which is the one that's described in the input for the CIP. For example, direct and frequent connections along Lafayette Road, Route 1 corridor, or other priority corridors between neighborhoods and schools, downtown jobs and hotels, and CNJ at Pease would greatly reduce transportation costs for residents of affordable housing and others to jobs. One of the greatest challenges for downtown workers is first housing and second transportation, and together those can comprise 50% of household income. So it's really very difficult to address one without the other. A shuttle loop would reduce traffic and demand for parking, which are really priority concerns of the city as reflected in the parking study, and bring residents downtown. And there's been a lot of debate recently about the best way to bring residents downtown. And I would argue, in addition to discounts, parking discounts, such as we have now, providing a low-cost or even free shuttle would be a way of bringing people in who don't have cars or prefer not to drive or don't want to pay for the cost of parking. A shuttle loop would also support car-free tourism. Visitors could arrive from Logan and Boston South Station directly to CNJ at Pease, hop on a shuttle, connect conveniently directly to downtown hotels, restaurants, and shops for a car-free visit. This is how tourists visit historic piers like Burlington, Savannah, Charleston, where a great advantage of the trip is you don't need to rent a car, you don't need to look for parking. For the city, and in the case of Savannah, the city, the bus operator, and the hotels have a association that manages and operates and funds a free shuttle loop that serves residents and visitors. Rather than waiting another year to explore the availability of state and federal funds, and I say this as a former US DOT employee, the availability is scarce to none currently of federal funds that could pay for something like this. Definitely worth exploring, but that I would suggest moving ahead quickly on this. There are opportunities to move ahead to explore options. The Sustainability Committee members could work with staff to identify quickly best practices and explore options with the Rockingham Planning Commission and Coast. For example, what would it take to reconfigure Coast Route 41 bus as a shuttle loop with, instead of hour frequency, half-hour frequency, creating a Lafayette Route 1 transit corridor that could be a real opportunity to concentrate growth, which is already happening with the development along that corridor, directly connecting to downtown, then on to the West End, the hospital, down Islington to the West End, to CNJ, and then loop back on the half hour. That's something that could be explored quickly and directly, really, with Coast, leaving the RFP for a larger, more ambitious study. The EDC and other interested committees, and I know the EDC has looked at microtransit, as well as employers, developers, and the hospitality industry, could join a discussion of possibilities and partnerships, including possible funding sources, private sector contributions from employers to bring employees to work, support car-free tourism from the hospitality industry, or provide an amenity and have developers contribute to that amenity besides parking, and perhaps complementing limited parking to residents of affordable and other housing. Expanded public transit might be a compelling use of parking revenue to bring residents downtown and reduce parking demand, particularly if rates rise for non-residents, thereby supporting the bus, reducing the parking demand for the future, and maybe extending the length of time before we have to build another parking garage. Limited initial research would provide focused input for a future RFP and could begin as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Sandberg. I live at 160 Bartlett Street. I just want to put in a word for moving up the Maplewood Complete Street project as a priority. It's really a glaring hole in our bicycle pedestrian network as it is. Every year we have a mayor's ride, we have a police escort ride, a bunch of people around town on a lot of great facilities that every year we have to stop at the North Cemetery to reconvene and figure out how exactly it is we're going to move through people on bicycles across downtown. It's hard. It's scary. You cross 4 lanes of traffic the way it's set up now. It's a big deterrent to people riding their bikes, and there's not a lot of easy ways of getting to downtown on a bike. And given that we have the North Mill Pond project moving ahead, we're going to have that path that will connect very soon to the East Coast Greenway. That's wonderful. It's being used. We have the side path on Borthwick that connects to Kate Street, and then just a quick hop across Bartlett, North Mill Pond, Maplewood, and then you're stuck. Like, there's not a good way of getting downtown once you're there. And design has been done. I remember attending a bunch of meetings maybe 10 years ago, designing complete street with parking and all, looked great on paper. That should be a major priority. And I should note there's 3 of us who submitted citizen requests, and Matt, who maybe will speak about that as well, he got a different response than the other 2 of us, which is confusing. And 2 of us, Tyler and myself, said sort of suggested that's not going to happen, and Matt got a more positive response, which is, maybe.
The math stuff.
That's what I want to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So good evening, Matt Glenn. I live at 34 Harrison in Owen Park, and I am serving as president of Seacoast Area Bicycle Riders. So we're a nonprofit advocating for better biking, and we've also in the last 2 years given out, I think we're at over 350 bikes. We gave out another 6 tonight for people who use them for transportation, and lots of people are using their bikes to get around. So I was part of the Bike Ped Network Plan Committee, and I really don't want to see that plan sitting on a shelf. For the last 2 years, many CIP requests have been denied pending completion of the new Bike Ped plan. So the staff comment was, we're not going to think about this until the plan is completed. So now we have the plan, and I really think it's important to see a few more projects going forward and the ones that can make the most difference. As Jonathan pointed out, a few others have joined me in making a request to return that Maplewood Ave Complete Streets project to the CIP. I think it was just last year that it was dropped from the CIP. The major design work was done in 2018 and 2019. In the new bike ped plan, there's a comment calling it an essential spine to the network, and it recommends bringing that back. As I think you all know, Maplewood was created during urban renewal, didn't exist before that, built to get cars in and out of downtown quickly. It's far wider than most of our streets. Some lanes are over 15 feet wide. There are long turn lanes that may not be necessary. As Jonathan said, it's an essential link to neighborhoods and to the Greenway. Think about kids biking to the middle school, libraries, sports, coming from those neighborhoods. They really have no alternative. There's no other place to route them. Outer Maplewood already has great buffered lanes. Outer Middle Street has lanes. I submitted another request for downtown Middle Street to be considered. So that's a separate request, I think the very last one here, that I hope you also consider. Let me see. I know there are concerns about cost. I think that bike lanes could easily be put within the existing curbing. It would not be the same exact plan that was laid out in 2019. But with just fresh striping, there's a lot that could happen, including potentially adding some on-street parking, which would narrow the road, would slow traffic, would turn it back into a street instead of a highway through our downtown. So I think you've got the strong encouragement on Maplewood, added encouragement for Middle Street, which could also be a fairly simple fix if there's political will for it. Doesn't have to be expensive. And then one last thing I want to briefly highlight is the side path along Route 33. I think that's existing in the CIP, so I don't know if it's important to speak to it tonight, but I just want to make sure that's a near-term priority. In that case, connecting the skate park, the rail trail, the soon-to-come Beverly Hill Road path, recreational facilities, and connecting through to Panaway, CNJ Terminal, the existing path in Pease. So that's also a really critical connection along Route 33. I think that's enough for your time. Thank you for considering it.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Hello, Tori Brooks, 737 Woodbury Ave. I am a member of the Sustainability Committee and was very involved in a lot of the climate action plan measures in that process. And I want to speak specifically to two of the CIP requests that were put in by Jessica Blasco and the Sustainability Committee. We had talked about these. We tried to be very there was a lot we wanted to put in, and we tried to really hone down to the ones we thought were important. So specifically, I'd love to talk about 2511 and 2512. For 2511, this has to do with the study about electrifying the city fleet. As Bill mentioned, transportation was a huge part of the climate action plan and of the emissions of this city. And though the city fleet is a small portion of the transportation, if you include all of the transportation in and out of the city, I think it's a really important example for the city to set. I understand, that there's a lot of process that goes along with EVs, and it ties into some of the infrastructure that's needed. But I do worry that we've lost out on some opportunities already because we did not have a feasibility study. There were grants available that are now expiring March 2026 through the state city fleet process, and that those grants weren't available for a feasibility study. And so because we couldn't use it for that, we also couldn't use it for what they were available for. And so I would encourage us to consider doing a feasibility study so that we can be ready if grant funding opens. As well as in that feasibility study, I think there's opportunity for possibly finding areas where it might be a better investment, where we have fleet vehicles that we are going to need to replace anyways. I think getting a better understanding of really what those numbers are and some of the cost savings that have to do with maintenance, and taking this a little bit more of a piecemeal approach, which I think a feasibility study would help us get our hands around. So I'd really love to see that study considered. On the 2512 request, this has to do with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. From my understanding, I think this was flagged as something that maybe was not viewed as capital and viewed as operational. In the past, that greenhouse gas inventory has been completed by interns. I think we're in a different place now than we have been in the past with this inventory and what it says. Since we've had the climate action plan, this is a key part of the climate action plan. It was a key part of building it and will be a key part in the transparency and accountability of how we're doing on those measures. And so I really want to see that focus kind of match the investment we made in the climate action plan. I do think that, there's opportunity still definitely for internship and, the relationship we've had with UNH in the past, who's helped us in that internship sourcing, and even down to using their software to do the actual inventory. I still think there's plenty of opportunity there, and I'd encourage us to do that. But I also think that there's some capital investment as well in making that data collection easier and more consistent. I also think the level of scrutiny of that greenhouse gas inventory should probably be at a next level, given that it is now a really important part of the climate action plan. And so I think investment on the capital side of things like software, basic services, maybe some oversight that could be scheduled out. Ideally, I think every 2 years, but I think the conversation on how often and exactly how much is obviously not what we're speaking to today. But I would encourage us to not just look at that as purely kind of operational, we'll do it the way we always have, and to consider if there's a little bit of investment we could put in. That scale in a lot of these things I think is really small, but might make that greenhouse gas inventory more consistent at the bar that we need it, and a real tool for the city. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tori. Next speaker.
Good evening, committee members. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Justin Richardson. I live at 586 Woodbury Avenue. I'm here today to speak in favor of the Woodbury Avenue project, which I didn't make the request on it, but I think it's a really important one. It's 25-27. 2 years ago, I attended about 13 or 14 meetings that were held, that were put on by the city staff, the Parking, Traffic and Safety Committee. A consensus was reached on a pretty good project. It was put out on a trial basis. And unfortunately, the wheels kind of fell off the wagon because it didn't work as it was intended. There were conflicts with how it was supposed to work with the fire and emergency vehicles, having to dodge the vehicles that would pull over to the side. But it's a really important need. It's often called a traffic calming measure. I really look at it as a traffic safety measure. If you have kids or see kids getting on the bus on Woodbury Avenue, one thing you'll notice, the little kids aren't there. Parents don't let their kids try to cross their street unless they're getting into the high school age. And that's a real shame. It causes a lot of traffic and other problems, logistics, and it's really a thing that should get fixed. In the last year, I was in a car accident. A vehicle ran into me right in front of my own driveway. the reason for the accident was as the driver who was pulling out had to do it so quickly because, you know, you look left, you look right, you have to go because sometimes you're waiting for 20 or 30 cars to go by and, you know, it's, you're having to pull out not in a safe window, but in one that you think you can get away with. And that's a real problem from a safety perspective, and it's important. In talking to the city staff recently and trying to get this back going and with some city council members, I get the sense that there's going to be a way to put together a plan that works. I know the last plan got shut down for good reasons. I think it can be done for less cost than what was proposed before. So I'd really encourage you to support that project, put it in the plan, make it a high priority one. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Justin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pugo from 160 Bartlett Street, and I'm actually going to talk about the same project. I entered the CIP 2527 about the Woodbury project, and I'll be brief. I would just like to stress the importance of including this project, the Woodbury project, and also the Edmund Ave project in your top priority list. In the past few years, residents have raised the issue of safety and traffic speed on these two roads. And so I think it's important we move forward, and completing these two projects would bring hopefully bring safety to pedestrians and cyclists on these two roads. It would also connect Woodbury to Maplewood. And it would be money well spent. So thank you for pushing these forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Randall. I live at 80 Diamond Drive. I'm here in support of at least two projects, but let's just keep it to two. A couple of things about Portsmouth that I've noticed. I've been here about 25 years now, and whenever I mention Portsmouth to people from away, they all go, "Oh, what a great place. We all want to go there." We suffer from the same problem in bicycling or even walking that we suffer from in transport, the last mile. And if we have projects, we have Maplewood, we have Middle Street. These projects are wonderful. They start well, and then they drop you like a rock, and all of a sudden, I have to become a car as I drive into the center of town. How many people here rode their bicycles to school? How many people here rode their bicycles to basketball, football, whatever practice you went to? Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, I don't care. How many 12-year-olds can do it safely now, and how many of their parents think they're safe and are willing to send their children down these streets when knowing that they come through a beautiful, painted, mind you, not separate, but painted bike lane, and then all of a sudden they have to become a car in the center of a project because the Complete Streets project wasn't finished, or the middle school or the Middle Street project does not go all the way into the center of town. If you can allow these projects to complete so that the last mile is covered by somebody, their parents will like it and they will like it. And those are the two projects I'm talking about, the Middle Street Complete Streets project, which as we all know is completed and planned and done, and then the Maplewood project, which would allow people to come down. We've already done massive work on the bridge. Let's get the infrastructure, the next half mile, into the city and raise these to priority CIPs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any more speakers? Okay. Is there anyone online?
Any attendees?
Okay. Thank you so much for all your public input. And thank you for submitting these. And even if you didn't submit, thank you for coming to speak to support, because it's good to hear the volume of some of the support for some of these projects.
So, you have in your packet that we thought we would invite you to consider tonight are 10 projects that were determined to be eligible as CIP projects. I would also offer up that before we're done, there were at least a couple projects that were mentioned in public comment that staff could speak to folks in the room who were determined to either be existing or in one case better served by another process. We could speak to those before we're done. So I have, the public won't see this, but you will. We've listed all of those. I can share it later for the public to see, but basically it's all of the green, if you will, all of the eligible, and they are in your packet, and we can call them out, reference what they are, and it's. I would leave it to the pleasure of the committee if you'd like to hear anything from staff to help you with your deliberation on each of those. So in this case, the first one would be project number 5 in your packet, which is page 7 of the packet. Thank you, Abby. It was titled Walkway Restoration. And staff's response was that they would add it to the FY27 CIP for the council, planning board and council's consideration.
Great. So, good recommendation. Put it into 27.
So that one we will move with. The second one then is number 8, which is in reference to solar. Building inventory or site inventory for solar arrays. Want to call on staff for any comments? It's up to you, given the.
Yeah, if there's
Yeah, I'll start. Peter,
Peter B. and then Peter R.
Yeah, I'll start, and Peter will add a little bit to it. This is something the Sustainability Committee really thinks is important. I also think it's important, basically inventorying where we can put solar in the city and looking closely at those areas so that we can have a sense of where to start and where to raise funds for the first projects. That being said, talking to Peter Rice, there's already a study that's looked at where we can put solar. So we already have locations identified. Maybe you can speak more to that study. Or?
Yeah, so as the energy or the Sustainability Committee may recall, we had a company come and do an energy audit, and part of that was looking for opportunities for solar arrays on various buildings, and we have proposals from them. So we have some general cost numbers to do solar on PPW, City Hall, Fire Station 1, 2, and 3, the community campus, as well as the public library. What we would suggest is that instead of doing an additional study, the monies would be better spent starting with enabling work. And what we would do is we would suggest a multi-year funding program where we start identifying some monies each year. And Jones Avenue is something that we're currently in the development, kind of the pre-development stage. So that would probably be the first one we would envision looking to spend money on. So
we create an element sheet that would have that.
How much money is it here? In total, if somebody just to write a check, how much would it be?
$3.1 million.
What would you recommend?
Breaking it up into manageable chunks.
10 years, 5 years?
When we're doing a roof, to me it's an opportune time to make it enable it so that type of time frame. Station 2 is getting a roof redone, make sure we can put solar panels on it. The DPW addition has the ability to put solar panels on it, so that'd be almost ready. So I would say we kind of look at it, phase it with the projects we have going on right now. City Hall project, the municipal complex project is in flux, as you know, or in development, and so it would be premature in my mind to do anything that kind of precludes changes there. So I would say every couple we could, depending upon the project itself, we may be able to do it in one fell swoop. The evaluation completed was very optimistic about federal monies. And I've asked them to revise the numbers to be, zero federal monies, to see what it would cost to be able to do this.
So
I
you're
think the
saying-
energy savings are still worthwhile, and then the carbon offsets obviously are significant.
So does it make sense to incorporate it into building maintenance schedules? Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yes, but at the same time, some of the roofs, it may push things out farther than, so I would look at it as more of a, every couple of years we put money aside. And depending upon as Jones Ave comes forward, we may find that it's a 2 or 3 year period to get enough money to do it to. Or we might be able to do a power purchase agreement, or we might be able to come up with some mechanism to make it go quicker. So it's hard until we get a real handle on all the options relative to funding. Whether it's we own it outright, whether we lease it, whether we do a power purchase agreement, those are all things that we need to look at. So to start, I would envision every couple of years we set aside some money, and as we accumulate the money, we can then implement a project.
Do we need a number?
Not today.
Today, for the CIP, we'll have to plug in for number sheet.
When they create the element sheet, they'll.
Conceptually, we've got it, then we have to figure out a number.
Yeah, I mean, it's, for example, if we went right with the DPW site, you're looking at about $800,000. So, where we're just invested significant amount of money, it's kind of hard for me to say, let's drop another $800,000 on the DPW. There are other places that have need investments as well. So.
Got it. Thank you.
On the Energy Committee, we had a great conversation with Hanover. And they looked at doing all of their rooftop solar in one big package, one big bonding thing. Paid off by the savings that they would get from behind the meter reduction in their utility cost. Does that make any sense for us to do?
That's how this was packaged. And the devil's in the detail. Nathan is a little more optimistic than I am. He and I had a conversation with them yesterday, and we need to really look at the spreadsheets that they generated. What are the assumptions? And their funding scenario was 20 years. We need to look at it again for 10 years. It's an investment, and if you look at it, at the end of the day, it's a policy decision. So we will bring the numbers together and make a recommendation to you, give you the information so you can make a decision.
Right. I just, you get a double benefit, right? You're getting green power that also saves you money after over the long term. It saves your operating cost. How that works with your capital spend.
Yeah.
Is the calculus that we run.
And the challenge is if there's no federal subsidies, it may just be an offset of cost on one side, but an additional cost on the other side, and that's out to. But the decision could be, because of the carbon neutrality issues or the ability to save. On that side, it might be a policy decision to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think Peter characterized as the first time he'd seen the money guy excited to spend money.
That's good.
There's definitely, it feels good. I mean, there's some great opportunities as you look at it, but it's got to fit with the rest of the capital plan. So.
And the energy demand forecasts were always around 1% to 2%, but right now they're creeping up to 2.5%, 3% a year increase in demand for electrons, and that's going to mean higher rates. So the payback gets more interesting.
So the consensus on that is that yes, we'd want to include that.
Yes.
The 11th then is was spoken to. It's electrification of the city fleet. It's number 11 on page 13.
I think this is a great to roll it in as we're looking at rolling stock for some of the basic vehicles. Of course, I would look towards Peter and other avenues for some of the folks, for some of the more robust vehicles that don't really have, as of right now, like an EV comparison. Obviously, dump trucks, big things like that. But I do think that this is a great initiative to look for some of the, more moderate or average vehicles that we have, as in, a lot of the things that our parking department or staff vehicles and things like that. I think that it could be looked into, especially as we look at the municipal complex and kind of some of that infrastructure in this area that we're going to be working on. To me, it makes sense that if we are going to look at electrifying some of our fleet while we are adding additions or modifications to the municipal complex, that we put in the infrastructure to support that.
Yes, we'll leave that one to move forward. Project number 16 was on page 18. Our recreation director, Todd Henley, is unable to join us tonight, but wanted us to share this, that the initial response to this request was that it could be added to the South Mill Pond CIP project, and that might be a location appropriate. Todd's statement tonight for you would be, when I received the request for outdoor adult fitness equipment to review, I thought it could be added to the South Mill Pond Playground project as part of the restroom installation that we anticipate for FY29. However, since reviewing that, I found out that as part of a subdivision project on Sage Lane, there's an agreement that a connection to the rail trail and a small park with adult outdoor fitness equipment be installed. Once completed and approved, the city will accept those areas and take over ownership and maintenance of them. The outdoor fitness equipment is currently being installed and the trail connector is already complete. Soon the public will have access to the equipment. Given this new information, he would suggest not adding more outdoor fitness equipment at South Mill Pond until we can complete that project and get more data, usage data on what the new park looks like. And so the staff recommendation tonight would change, not because there's a lack of interest in the project, but because we would say that is
We already have a project.
well addressed. So we would not move that forward as a project. Waiting to see how the Sage Lane turns out and waiting to get some data on playground as it finishes.
Okay, is the question of data more for the playground, its uses, kind of what that new space is, not the usage of the outdoor fitness on Sage Lane? Because I consider those two different demographics of what, okay.
He wanted to be able to have the opportunity to instead contemplate the usage that we have over at South Mill once it's finished, and then talk about how that would be, or whether that would be the best place to do something more.
And I guess this would be more of a Todd question of this. I would be interested to know, so this recreational area will only be accessible by the rail trail, correct? So people.
No, it's accessible off of Beverly Hill Road as well. There's 3 or 4 parking spaces.
Okay, there are,
at
okay.
that location, so
Great.
people can either access the rail trail or they can work out. And there's a trail that goes,
Through
there's a
there,
trail that
yes.
goes through the development.
Yeah, okay, just
So
so
you
I'm
could
all
come
linked
from the
into
rail
there.
trail up to the fitness area too, if you wanted, wanted to do that.
It's a beautiful little trail.
Yeah.
It really is.
Awesome, that's awesome. Okay, well, there we go.
The next one then is Maplewood Ave downtown complete streets, it's number 18.
Page 20.
Page 20. And I guess putting them on the spot, I will call out what we did, which was we worked at this in 2 different directions and contemplated the projects differently. So there were similar and competing projects. One was ruled to be eligible, the other one was ruled to be already existing. And so I would turn to my team of Peters and ask them for any comments that they could make about Maplewood Ave
It's so, when I hear this, when I look at this, what I envisioned was from the bridge to the railroad. But what I heard from Jonathan was that it's more than that. It's all down through the downtown. And, I appreciate that concern. I'm an avid cyclist and I navigate through the downtown on a regular basis. So it is not a novice bicyclist route. it's a more, it's a harder route for folks who are not experienced and comfortable. So I mean, it's in our, this has been identified, it's in the CIP, the Bike Ped Master Plan, so it's in the document, which we are putting together with an element sheet's been put in, and it's identified all the priorities, and so it's a regular funding thing, so it's in the mix.
And when we get past North Mill Pond, when we get to Maplewood, we're gonna actually have a crossing there, aren't we? To go to where it continues on the other side with the new project that's
Yeah,
starting,
it's gonna take
right?
you all the way to Market Street.
All the way to Market, that was what I thought, okay. Just wanted to double check.
Consensus says yes.
Yes.
The next is number 19 then on page 21. System management. Same project?
Yeah.
Similar.
Similar.
Enough so that we continue to call that eligible, and we'll move that forward and tuck that in.
Similar, except maybe auctioning off the Bridge Street lot probably is not gonna.
Listen, I still pray one day it will become that park that was talked about.
You can pray all you want. I don't think it's gonna happen.
People forget that. It's supposed to be a park.
It's gonna have
Bridge
concerts.
Street lot and auction plan.
Yes, what's that?
The next then I will move to is number 22, bolster and extend Middle Street, an eligible project. Staff clarification was that it had not been supported in prior city council conversations and was not identified as a priority in the updated Bike Ped Master Plan, but it is, as it stands, an eligible project.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that, so this is to add bollards, barricades, I feel like, Peter, maybe I'm crazy, I feel like at one point in time we did talk about, or I guess Peter Rice or Peter, I can't remember, I think it was Peter Rice, we talked about at one point what that would look like, the essentially connecting, the rail trail, the skate park, all of that, so I guess I'm trying to figure out where.
I'm looking at the Middle Street, Route 1 between 33 and Congress.
Yeah, this is to go down Middle Street where the bike lanes exist now to
Okay,
add more
to add
bollards,
more bollards.
like they did
The
originally.
last little bit.
Right.
Prior.
I have nothing against bollards.
How was our usage been? Have we tracked usage? We use
On what?
on Middle Street.
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head.
I drive up and down the street every day, and there is a fair amount of bicyclists that use it, at least morning and night commuting hours, because that's when I'm usually going up and down that road. I don't count them, but I see a lot.
What's that?
Flex post, not bollards, right?
Yeah, flex post delineators.
Can you
Well,
just explain to me the
but I'm
difference
not-
between a
I'm-
flex post and a
I
bollard?
don't think when I see this, I'm not seeing, flex post delineators, I'm thinking, we're gonna make that section a roadway, and I'm still confused. It's where we stopped into downtown, is what I'm understanding on this.
Okay.
That's what I heard, but that's not what I read.
Right, I
It's-
read this as route, this
Yeah.
is when Lafayette middle intersection down to Congress Street. Oh, we're on 22.
Okay, so,
31's more clear.
okay, so then why don't can we just maybe say no to this and move on to, or address it in 31, does that feel?
Yeah, let's do that, because then it's too confusing.
Okay.
But, if it's in the bicycle pedestrian master plan,
Plan,
then it's.
then it's addressed in,
Then we have a CIP element sheet to implement that master plan.
okay.
So, when it's appropriate, and if it's a high priority, if it's listed as a high priority, that is the immediate ones we're gonna be.
That's how our element
That's how
sheet.
the element
Sheets work.
sheets.
Big
The
range.
element sheet has all the high priority projects, and this part of it says that.
I didn't, so we need to make sure
I
that's
didn't connect
the
the two,
case.
these two together.
You should.
So do we want to talk about 31 while you're?
Yeah, I think, yeah, sorry, yes, I think if
31,
we
which
could
is
talk about 31.
I think it's the last one in the book.
It is, it's the very last page.
I will.
It's again, it's in the master plan.
Yeah,
I mean,
Okay.
it's,
It comes down to political will and whether I want to move forward with funding for it. And there's certainly a lot of interest in this project, I'll say.
Yeah, and typically when we're reworking that section of roadway, we'll be taking those into consideration.
So I think it should be included. I just think we need to make sure that we're talking to, getting a lot of input when we move forward with it.
Well, we're putting together a program
Yes,
and we're looking at reoccurring funding for that program.
Yeah.
So this is part of the master plan, which is part of the program, so as we move forward, it may not be this first year, it may be the first year, but, we are
it has an
identifying
element
it.
sheet, it
And
has.
so you'll see in the element sheet what projects are identified as priorities, and if you would like to change those priorities, you can do that when we get to the point where you're reviewing
And-
the CIP.
And just confirming that this project is listed as a high priority under that element.
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
So I can't.
That's okay.
Do you think it's already in the CIP based on?
It isn't,
So maybe it's existing.
it's in the master plan, which we have
Just the
we have an
CIP
element
place-
sheet to implement.
Yes.
So but we should include it just as a placeholder to remember it, or?
Yeah, it should be included and created in an element sheet so that we can look at
the element
it.
sheet's
Not an
gonna
additional.
list all of the
Element street, complete street should be included in the element sheet.
Yeah.
So this doesn't necessarily get its own element sheet, but we keep it right now to make the recommendation so that we make sure it's included in the CIP.
Yes, it's completed in the, yes, the complete
Yep.
streets massive bike path.
Take you back then to number 23, which would be on page 25.
So this is just a yes.
We've heard comments tonight. This is the artist lives and work.
I say yes.
Yeah, I think we can put it in the CIP and figure out that it's funded.
I'll move on to number 30.
To the second last, please.
Yep. Have to keep thinking about the right way to do this.
Okay. So this is also listed in the staff comments that it is a top priority in the bike med plan, so we would assume that we would see this in the element sheet to, and then obviously funding is allocated.
Because this is the part of Lafayette that New Hampshire DOT is not doing, right? I just want to make sure I get that. Yeah, okay. Because they're going to Wilson, this is Wilson.
Well, I mean, we don't know about the funding of that.
I know, and the 10-year plan, everything's been taken out, so
That's pretty
very
rough.
frustrating.
So this will be part of the master plan element sheet, right? Or-
Treated the same as
Master
31,
plan, yeah.
same as 31, right?
Yes,
Yeah. All the high priority ones from the bike ped master plan.
okay, or we'll be on that one element sheet. Understood.
That's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
Primary funding for this is for $4 million. Do we, sorry, do we, it says in here approximately $4 million in the DOT 10-year plan, but do we know if that's still?
So you're talking about,
I'm still on 30, sorry. It just, I only asked because in the additional staff comments mentions the funding mechanism of the DOT 10-year plan, but I guess I would just ask for at some point a status update.
Hopeful that would get the funding
Okay.
from that plan, but that's
so the 10-year plan, what has been taken out is anything that wasn't already started.
Okay, so,
So if it's already started, it stays in, but if it had not started, so the Portsmouth Traffic Circle.
Yeah.
We had put money in the 10-year plan to study it, that was taken out.
okay. So I guess
That
my,
wasn't voted yet, and it was they're recommending, they're having public hearings on that.
Yeah, the gas adherence, that's why we have to go to them and
Yeah.
fight for it, yes.
so I guess my question would be, in that funding, is obviously this $4 million isn't just for this, or I guess my question would be, would this be considered started?
Because they've, yes,
Because the funds have been allocated for the future.
right, I think that's considered already started, right, as part of the 10-year plan. Whether or not it still moves forward and they actually fund it is gonna be another question. But it hasn't at least been removed from the 10-year plan
Okay.
as of yet,
The 10-year plan, which gets revised every year.
every 2 years.
Okay.
sometime sooner.
I thought before we finish this process, I would ask staff to comment on projects 10 and 25 microtransit. and their presence in CIP. The speaker tonight, but both of those are categorized as existing CIP.
I know we had it in there.
Yes.
They were in
That
an
was if
existing
we've had
CIP, and that was the thought, was that if we can get funding for them, and the funding that was in there before was federal funding or state funding, if it's available, and then, where'd it go? 10.
1025.
Yeah. And then if it's not, if we can't find funding in before 28, then we put it in the CIP funded for 28. So we basically put money in the future, but try to get funding before that. And I know the federal funding mix is a little different these days, but.
What about CMAC funds? Are those been cut too?
I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how much, if they've been cut. There's been a lot of cuts on federal funds.
We just executed a CMAC grant.
Ones that have been funded.
Yeah, it had been identified, so it had been funded.
Right. Just wasn't sure if any new ones had been.
Put it in for that, and we could talk to the RPC about putting it on their funding list, but that would be basically the 10-year plan, so.
What's the dollar amount that we're looking at?
I think that's to be determined. But it's a feasibility study, so.
Right.
100,000?
I think it's 100 or under.
100, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I took Bill's comments to heart, that first, the federal funding is slim to none. But second, this is a program that if the feasibility proves it out, it reaches across all different parts of the economy. It could involve the hotels, it could involve workers getting in from parts of the city to downtown. It could be shuttles from outer parking lots for workers coming in from distant towns. And it also affects housing, if we have, as Bill says, half an hour transportation corridors, those are areas you can have density. And those are areas you can have lighter parking requirements.
I think we should definitely just talk about it when we talk about the CIP, about allocating money to move forward,
I
hopefully in
agree.
a sooner year.
Yeah.
Because sometimes having that feasibility study done also then allows you to leverage other things. And there might be some grant opportunities out there as well.
Well, and it could push that private side too.
Right, exactly. If we can show them how it would operate.
I would even argue 100,000, we could look at, is this more higher priority than some of the other things? I mean, that's how strongly I feel about it.
I would leave Peter on the hot seat and talk about the greenhouse gas, project number 12, that we think we can address operationally with the operating budget and internships.
Yeah, so I know there was some comment about internship not being as high end. I think we can get a really high quality candidate from UNH with the Sustainability Institute. They're usually either recent college graduates or graduate students. And that's who you're not going to get someone too much more sophisticated at a consulting company, and you're going to pay a lot more. I would say it's a good place to start personally, if we can pull that money together in-house, but.
What I heard was that there might be software or tools for, an intern or someone to use. So is there, I don't know what that might be, but.
We've used the UNH tool on the last one, which didn't work out like we wanted. So there might be tools with our membership to, it used to be a tool with the ICLEI. So that would be a big part of it, is what tool they would use. But I do think it's gotten more sophisticated. The students that are working on it are getting training earlier. And, I mean, it is something you'd have to put money to if you wanted to do it with a consultant, and it would be a significant amount more money. And I know how competitive these funds are with the CIP, so I thought that was a good approach to, we can apply for that program. We've always had really good success with those interns or their fellows, really. And I think that would be a positive way to go and keep it moving forward instead of, pushing aside. It could be changed to having a fellow look at how to do a greenhouse gas inventory and how to schedule it and how to make sure we're going to stay with our climate goals. And maybe it's adjusted to something like that, which would be another approach to look at. But I think getting that fellow to work on the climate action plan implementation would only help us.
Okay.
Sounds like the way to go.
At this point, I would suggest to you that we have, you have had consensus on projects 5, 8, 11, 18, 19, 23, 30, and 31. And that you would potentially be recommending forward to the CIP process for the planning board of the city council.
We took 16 out and some of them are being combined.
Are being combined, right?
Okay, yep.
Okay. Thank you so much.
If you wanna, that might be the only,
You need a motion
that
to
might be the only
approve as
formal part of the
presented.
night, if you
Okay.
wanted to do that.
I make a motion to move to approve as we've just discussed and presented.
Second?
Okay. Cool. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I'm gonna share.
Keeping up with us, June?
I'm gonna share this down one
She
more
knows she can
time.
get that sheet from him later.
And there you go. And want to remind folks that citizen request projects as they move forward, because they're eligible and have been identified in this case, will be taken by staff and incorporated into the element sheets that become part of the CIP that will move forward to planning board and city council. All of the citizen CIP requests that we've talked about or considered in the course of this process will be in the CIP document in what will be appendix number 1. And then just to remind folks of where we're at and where we're going, we started the CIP project in August, the process, in August. In September, we kicked off both the citizen request and department submissions. Tonight, we've just had the citizen request meeting for everybody's information moving forward. We will present the entire CIP to the planning board and city council in a joint work session on November 12th. That's, I think, a Wednesday. On the 17th, the following Monday, the city council will host a public hearing on the entire CIP. The planning board is invited to join in with them then. And the planning board will consider the full CIP at its November 20th meeting in hopes to make recommendations to the city council, who, in a piece of the slide you can't see right now, and I dare not mess with it. Anyway.
There you go.
They will take action, council is anticipated to take action on
December
their
8th.
December 8th meeting. So, anything else for the good of the order tonight?
Well said, thank you.
Just to thank everybody who really did their homework, had thoughtful input, and came out tonight to make their case.
Perfect, and I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Aye, thank you. Thank you all so much.